this was a video that I said I would go on ahead and try and get done as soon as I'm able to, after I pretty much made that rant about, well, what was it? What exactly was it that I ranted about? Oh yeah, now I remember. Well, even then though, I still stand with what I said with my little rant and everything like such. But, oh yeah, with jobs and things like that, but still, I mean, we have to literally talk about the school system. I can guarantee you all, nobody really enjoyed school. I mean, there are a couple of few that actually did enjoy it, but with all due sincerity, though, I'm sure most of us didn't. But it isn't really a matter of whether or not we liked school or not, as it's not exactly the thing. What I am going to be talking about, however, is the basics of school that is a huge problem with today's society, specifically to our younger kids. And if you think I'm going to be ranting about teachers, I'm going to sit there and go on ahead. I guess this is the best time to sit there and start talking about basically the kids and of their own, the teachers and of their own selves. I'm not going to rant about them because let's just be completely honest here. If you were a teacher sitting there making who knows how much, probably maybe like $5 or $6 an hour, sitting down at a desk, having to sit there and continuously grade papers and teach a giant thing of lessons that you yourself might not even like or even want to sit there and teach. I mean, let's be completely honest here. I don't think that you're going to want to sit there and put every little bit of effort into into the lessons and of their own selves. I mean, because nobody's going to want to care. I'm not saying this is the case with every single teacher, as there's plenty of teachers, I'm sure, that love teaching and love making it the career that they have. But of course, though, with the fact that teachers are genuinely extremely underpaid and not really treated too well, to be honest, not just by the students, but even by the staff and faculty and everything like such, I mean, you can't help but feel sorry for them, and yet we wonder why they don't often do a very good job in their education system. And it's not even with the aspect of, high school or college, it's even elementary schools too. Now, I do want to further clarify this. I am not against education. If anything, I am pro-education. I believe that all kids should be able to learn how to read, write, and their basic math, and pretty much literally everything that needs to be dealt with and done with. The basic things that do need to be taught to a young child. That way they have the ability to understand everything that needs to be said and that needs to be done. That's extremely important. I believe in the importance of English classes. I believe in the importance of grammar and such, because that's a really good way of helping out a lot of, students. Heck, it helped me out. I mean, how do you think I'm able to write how do you think I'm able to write stories? It's like long ones too. I'm not saying I'm perfect or anything with it, but still, I mean, these kind of classes in of their own selves are actually very, very important. And I do understand the importance of all of those kind of classes. However, though, there is a huge line I have to sit there and draw when it comes to other kind of classes that really don't provide much for younger kids. For example, I'm talking about the aspect of history, math, solely on the algebraic type, and of course a couple of extra other ones, and specifically, and also a couple of extra classes as well that are going to be mentioned. Let's start off with history. I understand that it's extremely important to learn about your history and everything, realize the mistakes that, society has done in the past and not try and do that again, which, let's be completely honest here, people, it doesn't matter what we do. I mean, we're going to repeat history one way or another. It's just going to happen. It's an honest truth here. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do. I mean, we can try and prevent that kind of tragedy from happening, but it will eventually happen again. But that's also the case with the education system, though, is the fact of the matter that education, especially when it comes to the history classes, what does it really provide in the long run? That right there is the biggest thing. What is this going to provide in the future for our kids? The answer to that question is not very much, if barely even anything at all. I mean, if you really want to get technical with it, a lot of things that are taught within history, even though they are important, at least to know about, it isn't something, however, that, it isn't exactly something that any kid is really going to sit there and keep in their mind all the time. I mean, who's going to sit there and remember, when this specific war happened in like a certain date or time? I mean, who's really going to use all that? I mean, unless you're a history buff or something along those lines. But another thing, too, is, some of the information you don't even get all the way through in an entire year. I can sit there and say for a full-on fact that when it came to the actual concept of history classes, never once was there ever a time that we completely filled out the entire book, that we ever learned the entirety of our history. Even in the earliest times of, even the earliest times of history, specifically the later version at the end of the textbooks, we would never work with. And something else, too, that I have to sit there and say as well is, what exactly, like I said, what's the point? I get it, it's to help educate some people about certain things, but even then, though, to me personally, it just doesn't exactly seem to really work out well. Another issue I tend to have with schooling is the homework. I can certainly agree with every single child out there that homework is one of the worst things to be given. Now, I do understand why it is given, but be completely honest with yourself here. What is it going to even help? You sit there and you wake up at an extremely early time, oftentimes at around maybe 6 a.m. each and every single day from Monday to Friday, having to get up and having to sit there and spend at least 7 or 8 hours of your life in a small little classroom, bored as all hell, and probably even hungry as hell too. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. Probably hungry as hell, and you just don't want to even bother being there. You're completely sleep deprived because of the lack of sleep that you get in a single night. And then, to top all of that off, after you finally get done working all that grueling time at school, you have to go home and work at least 2 or 3 more hours at home doing an endless amount of homework. This, my friends, is a big issue. See, here's the thing when it comes to the aspect of children's brains, and even high schooler brains. Homework, like all the unnecessary amount of homework that's given, you're not guaranteed to learn any of it. In fact, you're more likely to forget everything. I can certainly promise you all one thing right here and right now, with all the amount of homework I've actually gotten in the past. I actually remember back in elementary school that I had a backpack completely filled to the brim with textbooks that I had to bring home, that I actually had to bring home with me so I could do my homework in, and I have a hunchback because of it. It's probably noticeable, but it's there. I have a hunchback because of it. And another thing, too, is that having all that weight on one child's back is going to do a lot of damage to their spine. I mean, it's either you're going to be extremely hunchbacked, or if worse comes to worst, you're going to sit there and have a lot of back problems in the future. Fatal ones if it's really bad. Now, I don't know if this is exactly the case now, but even then, though, all the heavy amount of books, all the homework that has to be given to a single child, nonetheless, doesn't help improve their memory, doesn't help improve anything. If anything, it just makes kids freaking hate everything when it comes to the concept of school. And another thing, too, rigorous testing. This I never understood. I never truly understood why there was always so much constant rigorous testing. I mean, there'd be times there'd be a pop quiz that would come completely out of nowhere, and you might not even be able to know anything because of the fact that you couldn't focus because of literally nothing that sticks out. That's another issue when it comes to teaching these kind of things, is that even though there are tutors and everything like such, you're not guaranteed to automatically have everything stick in your head, and to have sit there and have a pop quiz come out there and just sit there and slap you in the fucking face. I mean, that right there is already a big pain in of its own self. And of course, getting back to the homework aspect of it, it's extremely grueling. And, well, not just extremely grueling, but your brain can't handle it. It's going to get to that point where it's not only going to completely tire you out, but you're going to be sitting there studying so much that any important information that you had is just going to get pushed out of your brain, and you won't even remember anything, thus completely making all those hours pointless. Now, I have heard, some people sitting there and say that you should have like a specific study schedule, but even with that kind of thing, you're still not completely guaranteed to, do a whole lot. I mean, there's some people that are able to keep up with this kind of thing. And here's the thing too. Here's the important thing. Homework does nothing but push away all the knowledge that you did wind up learning. Honestly, if you're going to sit there and bombard them with a ton of homework, why even bother teaching them any of the things that you're teaching them? It's not really helping them. It's not helping any of the kids work. And of course, with the rigorous testing, it's too much stress for people. It really is. But that's not the most insulting thing. To add insult to injury, there's a grading system. And let's be completely honest here, people. The grading system in and of its own self is the biggest issue regarding school. Because when it comes to the grading scale, you have A, B, C, D, and F. A for being pretty much great, and F being complete failure, which is why it's called F. But here's the problem with it. The grading scale in and of its own self does nothing but completely and utterly make every student pretty much feel like crap if they get an F or a D. I mean, there's actual people out there that if they get a D or an F or even a B at times, they go into like a crazy social freaking anxiety attack. In fact, I actually have a little bit of a story about that too. Here's the thing. Here's the biggest issue with grades. As I've already mentioned already, they're a problematic issue. They're very, very, very problematic. But here's the thing when it comes to grades. I remember one time I was having a bit of a struggle with geometry. I fucking hate geometry. I'm going to be completely honest here. I hate it so much, and I'm quite sure most of us do. Honestly, I do wish that in of its own self was an optional class, which I do believe many of these math courses should be optional. If you want to take those kind of classes, go right on ahead, but it should not be mandatory. That's a problem. But of course, getting back to the whole my story, I remember I was in a geometry class, and I was not doing particularly well. Now, of course, I will put a little bit of blame on myself that I didn't really ask for help, but at the same time, though, the way that my parents would honestly sit there and do the whole math thing was already hard enough as in and of its own self, and it would not help me in any way. I remember asking for help, and nothing in and of its own self would, literally nothing would help at all. Because that's another problem with school. Every single time you go there, every year, it's always a brand new way of doing things. And this is especially true with even basic math. And that is a really big issue. Because when you start going to your parents and things like that, you're just going to be even more confused and not understand any of it because there's going to be they have their way of doing it. While you have to sit there and do it another kind of way. And even if you do it with your parents' kind of way, you're most likely to sit there and get your answer marked wrong because you're not doing it in that specific way. And that is a big slap in the face to many students who want nothing else more but to understand this kind of thing. But getting back to my story, I remember I wasn't doing too well. I think I actually had a D in geometry. I remember getting my progress report once. And here's the thing. I snapped. I flat out snapped. And it wasn't because of the fact that I had a D. Well, that was partially the reason. But the main reason being is that it made me feel like such a failure. It made me feel like absolute shit. It made me want to rip my hair out. I freaking snapped. I pulled out a paper clip and I started stabbing myself with it. Specifically in the thumb. I just got pissed. I didn't hurt anybody or anything. I don't do that, but I started hurting myself, and they actually had to get the principal and everything to come and get me and bring me to the counselor's office to talk because I just couldn't handle it. It was the fact of the matter that no matter how hard I tried, everything just went by wrong, and not to mention that parents too, oh my gosh, grading system is literally put on such a high fucking pedestal now that, it's like even if you have it's like a simple letter grade can determine whether or not you not just fail or pass, but also can determine whether or not you lose something, whether it be your mind or whether it be something else. But yeah, it was bad. I actually had to sit outside for the rest of the class because, I was a bit of a danger to some of the students. And I freaked a lot of them out too because I never snapped like that before. It didn't happen ever again. I mean, but even then though, there was still that situation where I literally lost it because I just couldn't handle the fucking stress. I couldn't. I tried everything that I could do to make sure of it that I did well. And having to sit there and have parents continuously on my ass all the time, sitting there saying, why do you not have an A or things like that, and pretty much guilt tripping me to the fullest extent of guilt trips, was problematic. It hurt me. It killed me. But that's not the worst part about it. I remember going home, and this is going to be really dark. So just a bit of a warning here. I remember going with my little progress report thing and, showing it to my stepmother. And obviously she wasn't particularly happy about it. I mean, she said that, you're sitting there and, why are you not doing I mean, I don't know. It triggered depression for me. I remember feeling like shit. And I remember her leaving to go and, work and stuff like that. And I was home alone. And I just remember feeling like shit. In more ways than you would think. And I walked into my room. And I actually collapsed on the ground crying my eyes out. Because I felt like an absolute failure. I felt like I was amounting to nothing. I felt like I was an absolute piece of shit. I had no rhyme or reason to even remotely be happy at all. I cried, I think, for about over an hour. But that's not the worst part about it. Afterwards, I got up from there and I started writing a suicide note. I don't have it on me anymore, thank goodness, but I actually sat down on a desk, put out a piece of paper, and started writing down a suicide note. Basically apologizing to my parents of how useless I was, how much of a piece of shit I really was, how I can't ever do anything right, how I have all these problems, and then I'll never succeed to anything. And, I'm going to stop it right there just for a little bit. And I know some of you might think that that's a bit of an over-exaggeration because of the fact that that was just 1D. You don't seem to understand this. The grading system is put so high up in standard that if you don't have A's, or even B's, or even a C, well, really mostly A's or even a B, then you are considered pretty much the lowest of the low. You will never amount to anything. You're pretty much a pile of dog shit. That's quite literally what they make you out to feel, and that's exactly how it made me feel. So afterwards, after I got done writing, I put the note on my desk, and I went over and I started trying to look for my dad's pills, because he has a ton of them. And I grabbed it, and I hesitantly opened it up, and I started taking a couple of the pills. I didn't take many of them, thankfully. I actually stopped in the process and started freaking out because I thought I was going to die because I was taking somebody else's pills. And I was afraid of committing suicide because of the fact that I believed in hell, which, if I had to say one good thing with my old Christian faith is that, it kept me from killing myself out of fear of going to hell. Which is a good thing because, that's like the one good thing I can really say. And I started freaking out. I started praying. I started doing a bunch of other stuff. And that's another thing, too. I pretty much went into a huge mental breakdown after that. Afterwards, I think I took the letter and I threw it somewhere. I just felt like shit for the rest of the day. Obviously, though, my dad wasn't angry with me or anything like such. He understood. He didn't punish me or anything like that. He just wanted me to do a lot better and ask them for help, which, like I said, wasn't exactly a possibility due to the fact that their way of doing things was complete opposite. But that goes to show you how bad these things can get. I know it sounds completely and utterly crazy for me to attempt suicide over the fact that I was not doing that well in school. But like I said, the system in and of its own self, that is exactly how you are supposed to be. If you are not making good grades, you are considered a low-class piece of trash. You are considered a degenerate. You are considered a freaking idiot. You are considered a lot of things. And even if you do have horrible grades, the teachers and many other people will guilt trip you so much to the point where they will make it seem that if you do not have perfect grades in your classes, in every one of them, not only will you never succeed to anything, you'll be pretty much living a 9-to-5 job at a fast food joint, pretty much poor and picking pennies for the rest of your fucking life. That's precisely the kind of thing that schools, public schools, private schools, and other schools out there make you sit there and feel like. They make you feel like shit. Which is why if I ever have a kid, I am never sending them to a public school. I'm homeschooling them. Or at least hiring a private tutor or someone like that, because I'm not having my kid go through that crap. I mean, if you think that the school system back then was so bad enough to drive me nearly to kill myself, imagine how it is now, knowing the fact of the matter that schools today are sitting there teaching kids a bunch of stupid shit that doesn't even need to be taught. I mean, let's be completely honest here. Do we really need to sit there and have a course on freaking social justice? No, we don't. It's bad enough that it's in colleges, but we don't need them in high schools or even elementary schools. Treating people right and treating them well is how we should learn. But yeah, with that being said, here's another big issue when it comes to the school system. School systems don't care about street smarts. You have to have street smarts in order to live. You have to know how to balance a checkbook. You have to learn how to properly manage your finances, how to buy a house, how to sit there and basically get a job, how to sit there and live. Very few schools teach that kind of thing. I actually had an economics class, a few of them actually, and they didn't really teach me much. I kind of wish I had paid a little bit more attention to it, but even then though, they didn't really teach much. But I was lucky enough to even get that, because most schools don't teach you this kind of thing. If anything, if schools need to be teaching something, they don't need to be teaching completely useless crap like old history that literally nobody wants to even bother thinking about. Or then don't need to sit there and teach what's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. They don't need to be teaching, what's the square root of 546. They don't need to be teaching freaking cell crap or whatever, unless you're becoming a biologist or a scientist or things like that. But even in that matter, though, even in those matters, you don't need to be learning that kind of useless crap. You need to be learning stuff that actually can benefit you in life. How to pay your taxes, how to get a house, how to do a mortgage, how to sit there and get a job, how to sit there and do the basic simplistic things in life that school never teaches us. Not even parents teach this kind of thing anymore because they expect the school system to do it. And with all due sincerity, once you finally leave high school, once you finally have completed all of those things, you will be pretty much leaving out there with nothing else more but a piece of paper in your hands. I'm not saying, however, though, that all aspects of school, whatever it is, even high school, is useless. There are some out there that are actually very beneficial. And if you have the opportunity to take those kind of classes, like say home ec or like cooking or any of those kind of things, then go at it. That is a great thing for you to take if you have the elective that you're able to do. Unfortunately, though, I kind of wish that things like, trigonometry and other things like such were all optional. Because let's be honest here, what exactly is geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, and other things like such really going to help out? What is any of that really going to do for a person who's probably not even going to be taking a field in that whatsoever? Have those things be optional and provide a lot more courses on the basics of life in general. If you want to make mandatory courses, have those be mandatory courses. Have, learning how to do your taxes, learning how to do all of those kind of things, mandatory courses for everyone, because everyone's going to need to know that. Learn how to be properly financial with money. Learn how to save it properly. Know how to choose banks. People, this is literally the kind of thing, and I'm not sitting here and just saying this because nobody else, everyone has said this stuff. Everyone who rants about school, everyone who knows what the school system does and what they teach, everyone knows that these are the kind of things that they don't teach you, but what they should be teaching you. That's what school is honestly supposed to be about. You're supposed to learn to read and write and do basic math and other things like such, and English and all that other stuff too. And you also need to be learning about how exactly you can manage your finances, get a house, and basically learn how you can keep yourself and how to, basically learn to live comfortably for the rest of your life. These are the kind of things that schools will never teach you. I don't even think private schools teach you this kind of thing. The very most you are going to be able to really learn, people, is learning from homeschooling. Because at least then your parents and family can at least teach you this basic stuff, because they've learned how to do this kind of stuff. They've learned how to actually be able to sit there and do the things that they need to do. Look at me. I'm 21 years old. I don't know how to freaking do taxes. I don't know how to do any of that kind of thing. I barely even know how to freaking balance a checkbook. I don't even have a checkbook. It goes to show you that, the school system does nothing else more but fill people up with useless book smarts and doesn't provide people with the basics of street smarts. I get it that you wind up learning that naturally in a sense, but for some of those things, but it's not all of it. Schools need to sit there and actually step up with their education system, because then if we actually learned how to teach people to do this kind of thing, we wouldn't have all this crime. We wouldn't have theft. We wouldn't have a whole lot of poverty. We wouldn't have a whole lot of any of this crap. None of us would. Some of us would be able to afford a home or things like that, or be able to know what we need to do, set up an emergency fund if we have that, save up as much money as we can get. Let's be honest here, people. This is the stuff they should be teaching, but they don't. And to the teachers, I have no blame whatsoever to them. If we really want to blame someone, we shouldn't blame the teachers. I've already made it already abundantly clear that teachers are not the people that we need to be ganging up on. Teachers are underpaid. Teachers don't get a whole lot. Teachers barely even get benefits. Teachers in and of their own selves, even the ones that love doing what they do, don't get enough. And they should be getting a lot more praise than they should be by the districts and even by the students too. Because I can't tell you how many students today are literally absolute fucking idiots. You want to know what's extremely sad? It's gotten so bad in the public school system that high schoolers that I knew couldn't even read the faces on a clock. Everything was so digitalized that you didn't even know how to sit there and read a freaking clock. I learned that stuff in freaking kindergarten, yet many high schoolers don't even know this kind of thing because it's never really taught anymore. Everything's so digitalized now. Another issue when it comes to the schooling and things like such is with parents. This is a big problem. Parents, many of them will find something to get offended over. And I'm not just talking about the religious crazy zealot one. Actually, no, I am talking about them. Because there's a lot of them. Political correctness, whether it be a religious side or a secular side, is going to be something that's unfortunately been in our schools since pretty much since in and of its own self, since like I wouldn't really say recent, but even then, way back then, let's just put it there. Schools are literally having to sit there and bow down to these freaking political correct bullshit people in order to not lose their funding. And the school funding in and of its own self is absolute shit too. And speaking of school funding, let's talk about school food. I don't know about you and me. I remember when I had school lunches back then. I remember, and it's kind of funny. I didn't hate them. I thought they were actually relatively decent. They were okay. School foods back then were fine. Hell, I even remember having to drink milk out of a bag. I'd play with them. I'd get like a chocolate milk and play with them. I wouldn't really drink it. Because if anything, I kind of thought the idea of actually doing that was gross and having to look at all the bubbles. I mean, I don't know. Just my own personal bias, but I thought that was kind of cool. But unfortunately, with school lunches nowadays, especially with the Michelle fucking Obama, school lunches have been so heavily reduced that kids today have literally no energy to focus. And another thing too is that even lunch times are put so freaking early too. I mean, do you really want to sit there and eat lunch at freaking 11:30 in the morning? There's schools that do that. I mean, lunchtime should be solely dedicated to around 12 to 3. Maybe possibly 4, but obviously schools don't run that far, but still. But getting back to school lunches though, they've gotten worse. I mean, they were never in the beginning they were actually relatively good to eat. Cooks and chefs and things like that actually made their food homemade. They spent their time and their effort crafting the food that we ate to make sure that it was not only delicious but nutritious as well, to feed a good mind. Unfortunately, later on, though, it kind of dived a lot more into pizzas and burgers and other frozen bull crap because, I mean, let's be honest, schools don't really have that much funding to provide a homemade meal. You might get that occasionally in certain public schools, but that's not very often when it comes to how schools today run. Now, of course, with Michelle Obama making these extreme changes with schools, it's actually made the situation worse. Because instead of providing kids with a nice big meal, a nice big meal full of good food to eat, like real meat instead of fake soy crap, big old giant salads and fruits and all that kind of stuff, most of the school food is literally garbage. They literally have to either cut down on calories, which is awful, because, in fact, I think even elementary schools, you can't have more than 800 calories of food on your plate. And in high school, I think it's like less than 1,000, if even that. And it's bad, because here's the thing. I mean, especially when it comes to school lunches. Kids are not going to eat that crap. I know for a fact I wouldn't even eat that crap. The school lunches, even now, like I said, have gotten worse. I mean, it's literally nothing else more but mystery meat bull crap. Food that does not taste good. Food that oftentimes is reused. Yes, that happens. And I can't tell you how many times there have been people who have gotten milk that is expired. There actually have been instances. I actually remember getting a milk carton that was like 3 or 4 months expired. And you have to really check that kind of thing. And many of the school milks are frozen. So you get like little ice crystals and things like that in that, and it makes the milk taste terrible. But oftentimes though, and this is especially the case with breakfast, many of them are not even thawed. Many of the milks and the drinks are not even thawed, so you can't even get a good drink. And not to mention the fact that they are so tiny. Back then, you could get like a giant quart of freaking milk to drink with your meal and be satisfied. Other schools now, the milk cartons aren't even that big. They're like they're barely the size of a freaking wrist. How the hell is that going to sit there and hydrate anyone? And don't sit there and say they can go to the water fountain. I don't trust those things. I mean, kids sit there and put their spit and everything on it. It's disgusting. It really is. I mean, with my school, you at least had an opportunity to get free water. Like water and everything, put into a giant case with ice in it. Likely chances it was sink water that, they got from the nozzle, but it was something else. It was something that I could at least drink and not die of thirst afterwards. And even then, how do you expect somebody to eat if they don't have something to drink with it? It's going to be difficult for them to chew and difficult for them to swallow, and it might even be a health hazard too. Another problem with the school food, and obviously the fact of the matter that it's disgusting, I think I've already mentioned, is the cost. The cost of school lunches are freaking crazy. And I know that there's free and reduced price lunches, but the whole system with that is so shady, I don't even really buy into it. It's like if you have a certain amount of money that's even like $1 over, the limit or whatever it is, you can't get free or reduced lunch. Even if you're piss poor, you can barely get any of that kind of food because they won't feed it to you. They don't want to feed it to you. And I remember this. I actually had brought my lunch with me, but I decided to go through the lunch line, and I even asked the lunch lady to give me one of those, if you can't pay kind of meals. She said, "Are you sure about that?" I said, "Yes," and I took it with me. You want to know what it was? 2 pieces of crappy cold bread, a slice of crap cheese that wasn't even the good processed cheese, I might add, an apple, and a milk. That's all it was. No protein, no vegetation, nothing. Except for a piece of crap. I mean, the school food's already shit enough as it is. But whenever you have such a horrid meal right then and there, it's not even a meal. It's just garbage. It's horrible garbage. But that's nothing compared to what could happen if you don't even have your money. You can't even get lunch, so you have to starve to death. I mean, how much of a sadistic fuckwit do you have to be to deny a child a meal? I mean, yeah, the food's crap anyway. I wouldn't eat it. But I mean, most kids are that hungry to the point where they have to sit there and eat the food that's given to them. I mean, and that's the little nutrition that they can even get. But whenever you don't have enough money, you can't eat whatsoever. Or you get one of those extremely crappy meals. So, I mean, what's up with that? I mean, if you're going to have a meal that for free or whatever it is, at least balance everything out. But many of them don't. They don't balance this stuff out. It's just bread, crap cheese, probably from the Dollar Tree most likely. I mean, let's be honest here. That shit never melts. I mean, unless you get the Velveeta stuff, which is so fucking good. But anyway, you don't get a proper meal. You get like maybe a little bit of milk. You get a piece of crappy fruit, which probably is old and withered away anyway. I can't tell you how much of the fruit I don't even eat. I don't eat the fruit there, because who knows how long it's been there for. I mean, but yeah, I mean, you have barely anything to eat. And if you try eating the bread and everything, it's so dry, because they don't give you condiments to put anything on there. They don't. They don't put anything. They don't put crap on it. They don't put any remote kind of thing whatsoever for you to get. Maybe a little pack of mayo. But I hate mayonnaise, so fuck that. Like, literally fuck mayo to the fullest extent of the word. But still, I mean, especially if someone who has like an egg allergy or whatever too. I mean, then you're gonna pretty much be eating a dry thing of nothing. So yeah, the school lunch thing is extremely fucked over. But at the same time, though, it's the budget that doesn't allow people to make, really good food. And who's to blame for that? The school system. I mean, not only is the school system completely piss poor when it comes to education, but it's also piss poor when it comes to food, treating their students properly, and many other things. Now, I'm not going to sit here and brag or anything like such, but Hancock High School, the school I went to, was a very good school. I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, they did a lot of different awesome stuff to, sit there and support people. Well, basically saying, they did a lot of fun stuff for us. And I'm not saying that all schools are like this. There are plenty of schools, a minimum amount of schools that actually do really, really well and have a lot of fun events, which is great. I'm fine with that. But of course, though, it really depends, though. I mean, in fact, Hancock High, I think, was rated #1 star school. And let me tell you, we had a freaking kick-ass time. We had freaking bouncy houses. We had DJ. We had freaking karaoke, which I did. And I got like a literal standing ovation and a freaking carry-on. I was crowd surf, people. That was fucking awesome. But still, though, I mean, there are some positives. I'm not saying that all of school is shit. But, I mean, you're bound to have some positive sides. And maybe I should mention some of those. I mean, depending on the school you go to, you can get a lot of different kind of, things. In fact, the school that I went to, we had a thing called the Krispy Kreme Social, where we literally had a shit ton of Krispy Kreme donuts handed to us. Well, you got to pay for it. You can either pay $1 for each individual donut, or you can pay $5 for half a dozen donuts. That was freaking delicious. And they had like a dance off too in the process. It was really, really fun. There was also a lot of amazing dances and stuff. I mean, but I think the best time that I remember when it came to school was the big star school party that we had. And this was like, it was divided up. Not everybody was there because there wasn't a whole lot of room. But I'm telling you guys right now, it was freaking beautiful. We had freaking bounce houses for like a bunch of teenagers to go and jump up and down on. We had a giant costume contest thing where we could actually wear our costumes to school. Like anything that we wanted to. I dressed up as Michael Jackson, if anybody wondering. You could sit there and get prizes. Like real good prizes too. I remember I got a ticket. Like a ton of these cool tickets after like winning a dance off. I wish I had a video of that. I'd show you guys. It was amazing. When I danced to Michael Jackson pretty damn well, Billie Jean for anybody wondering. And you know, you got tickets. And I also got a box of Nerds too that I had. And the tickets in and of their own selves, you know, I actually wound up winning a black Wii. I mean, there was plenty of amazing prizes like Beats headphones, Wiis, Xbox 360s, PS3s, literally a ton of awesome shit that you could get. And it was amazing. I mean, not to mention the fact that, you know, not only did I freaking dance and stuff, I actually did my own thing with karaoke with Man in the Mirror, and I got a freaking standing ovation and literally got freaking crowd surfed to like 30 or 40 minutes before like everyone put me down. Like they all loved it. It was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, there's also Friends and other things like such, and I mean, there is some good with it, but unfortunately the negative aspects of school oftentimes do tend to outweigh the positives. It's unfortunate, but it'll always be that way. Will there ever truly be a good reform in school? No. In fact, I truly believe that public schools and other schooling like such is just going to keep on getting worse and worse as time is going to progress. I mean, sooner or later, the school system is either going to lose its funding completely, or they're going to be so politically correct that nobody's going to want to take their kids there. I mean, even the most liberal people out there despise those kind of ideas. But even then, though, that's my big old giant rant about school. I honestly hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you all agreed. If you agreed with what I had to say, let me know what you agreed with down below. Also, let me know what you hated about school and also what you personally liked about it as well. I'm the Shadow Reader. Thanks again for watching today's episode. And like always, roll the outro.